You got it.
Okay, so I wanted to get started asking about the development of the film. I saw that you wrote the script for the movie, so I just wanted to ask about maybe what the inspiration was for the film and how the project really
Sure.
got started in that sense. Mhm.
Yes. So I started to develop The Secret of Sinchanee about 2 years ago. I like to write what I know. And so I felt a personal connection to my own heritage on my father's side. And I started first sort of with the locations where I kind of need to, when I write, I need to visualize where it's going to take place. And so my wife is from Western Massachusetts. It's where we were married. Spent a lot of time there. It's a big piece of my heart. And I started to sort of make notes in a journal of, oh, that's interesting there. I would like to do something there. That scene could take place there. And then from there, that was sort of like the foundation. And then I kind of, went into, well, what's the heart of the story? And I wanted to make something that, yes, had all the scares in it and all the thrills, but something that was maybe more meaningful, more impactful, that sort of worked outside the confines of the horror thriller genre. And so in these last few years, I'd been reconnecting with some of my family on my father's side that I've been estranged from for years. And my connection to the indigenous community, to my own heritage, to learning about stereotypes, xenophobia, to folklore of settlers and all the history of that, and then trying to make something that was cohesive, that that could tell a, albeit that the Sinchanee is a fictitious tribe, it's very representative um, of real tribes that continue to exist today and that existed before.
And also, speaking of really doing looking into the tribes, I also wanted to ask if there's maybe any research you did, or maybe how much knowledge you had about the tribe and in general, and what that experience was like on that end of
Sure,
writing the script.
sure. So in terms of like, I started with like, well, what films had been made that might seem similar to that, what had already been said, which wasn't a whole lot, and certainly wasn't a whole lot that I felt was very satisfying. But I also went into like what some of the stereotypes were, in terms of like in entertainment, in storytelling, and I kind of wanted to deal with that sort of head on. And I have a character in the film, the lead detective, that actually talks about how devil worshipping was a stereotype that settlers had actually put on indigenous people, which was just not true. And I thought that was really interesting too, because in my film, it's actually the settlers that are that this devil worshiping, if you will, cult. And so the tribe of the Sinchanee is not only deeply personal to my character, obviously in the film, but it's also to me personally. And so I read a lot of books. I watched a lot of YouTube videos on different documentaries and stuff like that, and I tried to make it as accurate as possible, without it feeling maybe either too heavy or too on the nose. I tried to like let it sort of breathe, but mostly it came from my heart.
And also, I wanted to ask about going out to direct the film as well, and what that experience was like of once you began filming on set and going from working on the script into directing as well.
Sure. To answer that in the most simplest way, it's terrifying.
Mhm.
I think that it's you're responsible for everybody, for every soul. It's like being the captain of the ship. You're responsible for every soul on the ship. It's very much like that, as a director, as a filmmaker. I think a big part of that was assembling a team that I trust, that are problem solvers. We hired 10 veterans and one Gold Star sister on this project, and we were a family. It was a living and breathing thing every single day. And I think that's a big part of it. You hire people that are going to get the job done, that are inspired, that also share your vision, that also are collaborative. I love to collaborate. I love people bringing their ideas and feeling comfortable and feeling that they have the space to bring their own ideas uh, to your vision, and then kind of elevating the storytelling in terms of like, okay, we're all invested in this, let's go. And I feel like we my co-founder of my production company, Nate Boyer, and also the lead in the film, he plays Detective Drew Carter. I feel like we achieved that. I feel like we created an environment that everybody felt was safe, that they could create, that they had a voice, that their voice was going to be heard. And so I feel like though I was the leader, though I was the captain of the ship, I was very much there to facilitate the day-to-day operations of executing that vision.
And also, speaking about the cast, I also wanted to ask about that experience. And I also saw that you star in the film and what that experience was like of really putting the cast together and also deciding to star in the movie.
Most of the roles I had written specifically, I had somebody in mind who I wanted to play. I didn't know that they were going to do it or not, because a lot of the actors in the film are actually not actors. They had never acted before. But I felt a deep connection with them personally. So as a director, I knew what I was looking for in terms of the performance and what I needed to get out of them. And so, directing myself, I kind of, I've heard other actor directors when they say, typically you focus on everybody else. Then when it gets to you, the camera's on you, you do like one take and you're moving on. And you got to be careful. I think Ben Affleck said that about doing The Town. And so that was in my mind too, of like, you kind of like, you feel like you got it. I hired a really great first assistant director, Lynn D'Angona. I hired her specifically. She did me a huge favor by doing this film. She usually works on bigger budget things. And she came in and she was like my guardian angel. I could look at her. I knew performance-wise when I could move on. I knew when I didn't have it. Because sometimes what you feel and what you're putting out is not exactly what's translating on camera, on screen. And so that was a big part of it as well. But I also think the biggest part of it is the personal connection. I knew exactly the story I wanted to tell. I knew exactly how it needed to feel. I could hear the soundtrack in my ears every day on set. I knew specifically what I was looking for in every single scene. And that's helpful when you obviously are directing something that you've also written.
Once the actors signed on to star in the movie, what was that experience like of getting to work with them as both an actor in the movie and also the director? And did you maybe have any rehearsal time, or what was that experience like? Really?
Yeah, I'm big on rehearsal. We didn't have the budget to be able to do the rehearsal that is conventional to movies that do have a bigger budget. But again, I hired specifically knowing what I wanted. So some of the heavy lifting was already done based on just the casting of the film. But I could give you an example working with my co-producer, Nate Boyer, who again plays a detective in the film. I know Nate intimately. So, we already had a side hand. Nate took, as the other actors in the film, took a leap of faith to trust me. And so I knew, when we were in it, I knew how to speak to him. And I knew, that gaining his trust was such a massive thing that I had to make sure that he felt that he could fail and I would be there to catch him. And I tried to create that environment and that experience for every actor. I working with children, working with non-actors that, it's not easy. You put a camera on somebody and there's 100 people standing behind it and you call action. It's not for everybody. You actually have to believe that there's not a wall of people behind the camera and there's actually no camera there. But I trusted in my decision making of the casting that the people that I cast were very truthful people in their own lives. And I feel like some of my favorite actors of all time are typically really great people in real life. I don't feel like the eyes don't lie, and I don't feel like you can give an honest performance on screen if you're not an honest person off screen. I genuinely believe that.
And Also, I wanted to ask about finding the location for the film as well, and what that experience was like of really deciding where you wanted to shoot and how the overall
Mm,
like house and the surrounding like
sure.
property and locations would look as well.
So I've spent a lot of time in Western Massachusetts, both in the fall, which is just stunning. We're coming upon they call it leaf peeping, where everyone
Mhm.
descends upon Western Massachusetts to see the changing of the foliage. It's incredible. I've been there during the winter. I was married out there. My wife's from Western Massachusetts, so we were married in the summer. I knew specifically I wanted to shoot in the winter. It's haunting. It's beautiful. It's kind of, as they say, hauntingly beautiful. And it's cold, which is not typically great when you're trying to make something for no money and you got to
Mhm.
kind of think on your toes and move quick. Um, but I knew specifically the locations of where I wanted the toe shop to, the diner that's in Turner's Falls to, some of the locations for some of the CSI work, Donovan's house. It was all, we had kind of created a little backlot, and we were very fortunate to have shot the movie pre-COVID. So we did post-production all during COVID, but we were, we had wrapped, and I think the shutdowns happened 2 months later. But yeah, I mean, again, and I've said it, like
Mhm.
knowing those locations are so beneficial in the writing, because you can visualize it and it makes it so much easier to know where you want the story to go and where it needs to go. Sometimes the story lets you know where it needs to go.
Also, I wanted to ask about the visuals for the film as well, and was there a lot of maybe like special effects or stunt work
Mm,
that the cast did,
yeah.
or what was that aspect of the film like as well?
So I worked with a really great team out of Toronto, Alter Ego Post Production, and they were a godsend. They were just professional. Their work is, you know, second to none. And Eric Whip was actually my colorist, and his team did some of the VFX work in it. Eric colored, was one of the colorists on the Mad Max remake with Tom Hardy. So anyone listening or watching this, you have to find, when you have no
Mhm.
money, you have to find unconventional ways to reach people. I reached out to Eric. He's going to kill me for saying this. I reached out to him on Instagram. His DMs are going to blow up. And I told him my story, and I told him, I was already in post production. I told him, like, I had no money and this is what I really wanted to do, but I hope to build a family. And when the next movie where I do get a budget, but we could work again together. And so his team were so crafty in exactly knowing the tone of the film, the tenor, knowing, what my vision was and how to elevate that vision. So in terms of the production, in the VFX, for some of the more action sort of stuff, I really relied on interesting camera angles. My cinematographer, Logan Fulton, did a wonderful job. He's been nominated for a bunch of awards on the International Film Festival circuit. And I really relied on a lot of the camera movement for a lot of that stuff. I told him, in our early meetings, I always wanted the camera moving for the most part. I referenced a movie called Arrival that Denis Villeneuve did, and if you watch, I believe the camera is always moving until the arrival of the aliens, because it's foreshadowing the impending doom of, this extraterrestrial life. And I really wanted to feel the same way in The Secret of Sinchanee. And then, of course, the soundtrack, which was composed by Ricky Rook and Gary Regula out of Toronto, Canada. Just a tremendous score. They just won best film score at the Burbank Film Festival, but we really worked. I mean, they really understood the story, and I was able I mean, note for note, work with them exactly what we were trying to do, because so much of the sound lived in my head. So being able to express that. So I think when you put all of those elements together, it became this cohesive sort of living and breathing thing that we now see on the screen.
Also, speaking about the film festival circuit, I also wanted to ask about being able to bring the movie to the Boston Film Festival and being able to screen virtually over the weekend, and what that experience has been like of preparing for that as
Sure.
well.
Well, being an official selection at the Boston Film Festival, I don't even think I've told the organizers there has been a lifelong dream.
Mhm.
It's one of the oldest film festivals in the country. It's a great honor for my cast and crew to be recognized, to have our film recognized there. Living in this kind of brave new world, screening virtually is exciting because for people that don't feel comfortable perhaps going into a movie theater, this gives them the opportunity to still view the film exclusively before it's actually released in North America on October 8th. And so I know that they're doing a lot of interesting things at the festival this year. This is obviously a hybrid festival where they're doing the virtual screenings and I think a short schedule of in-person screenings. I know that one of the big things was the Boston Omni Hotel, where they're doing a bunch of events there as well. So it's kind of uncharted territory. I take my hat off to them for trying to make this work during such uncertain times. I know that even only just last year, I think the Toronto Film Festival, which is one of the biggest in the world, they were doing a drive-in, and at that point, Americans couldn't even come north of the border, so it was mostly a Canadian audience. So I think that everybody's trying to adapt as we sort of work through this together, not just nationally, but internationally.
Okay, I think that was mainly it, but thank you again for taking the time out to speak with me. I appreciate it.
Of course, and thank you for taking the time to speak with me. I really appreciate you
You're
shining a
welcome.
light on this special film.
Mhm. You're welcome. Thank you again. Mhm.
All right, take care. God
Thanks, you
bless.
too. Bye.
Bye.
Mhm.